All right, welcome to this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. I'm your host, Will Christensen. We are sponsored by Seller Labs, the number one tool for Amazon sellers that are just getting started. Peter, I am super excited to have you. We met in person in Austin. It's been a couple months now.
Yeah, definitely excited to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. So, Peter, you own Barrel Holdings, which is a holding company for a couple of other companies. Why why would an Amazon seller or an e-commerce seller who's interested in monetizing their mental capital be interested in hearing from you?
Yeah. So quick background, I got into the agency game back in 2006. So over 18 years, I've been in the services business, helping different brands, clients with various needs, and decided a few years ago to really take those learnings and apply it to different agency businesses. And since 2021, when we founded Barrel Holdings, we now have a portfolio of six different agencies, and some that we've started ourselves, some that we've acquired. And yeah, I think where I'm able to add value is just a lot of the mistakes I've made over the nearly 2 decades, just helping our agency leaders avoid that, and hopefully some lessons I can impart on this podcast.
Love it. Sounds like, I mean, 18 years is a long time to survive in the agency business. I know a lot of people who did not make it 18 years. I was one of them. I lasted, I think, 4 or 5 years. Oh no, I lasted like 8 or 9 years in the agency world, first in an advertising agency and then shifted over to an automation agency. And now I do mostly SaaS and go to market stuff. So I'm not on the agency side as much anymore. 18 years is a long time.
Yeah, I think, one thing my co-founder Siwuk and I talk a lot about is, we might not be the brightest, we might not be the best at what we do, but we're very good at, just being resilient. I think like whenever we've suffered different types of setbacks, whether it's with the clients that we're working with, whether it's employee related challenges or whether it's just kind of the financial side of things, like we've, been able to kind of stay strong, kind of bounce back and, just I think more than anything, just through a lot of kind of laughter and, just camaraderie, we've been able to make it through.
Love it. Okay. So we're going to ask a first question we ask on every episode. Tell me the first time you remember monetizing mental capital. So think back like lemonade stand, and we blur the lines a little bit when we go back there. I get that lemonade is a physical product, but really like when my daughter's out there selling lemonade, she's not selling lemonade, she's selling charm. Like that
Yeah.
kid could charm. I've had people pay $20 for a glass of lemonade on the corner on my street corner over here because that's who she is. So I'm curious, when's the first time you can remember monetizing mental capital?
Yeah. I think, elementary school, I had been really, enamored with this idea of like publishing my own magazine, just like, because I think at
Okay.
home we got Time Newsweek, we got the New York Times. And so I think, and also just, my dad had a copy machine at home and then I had a desktop computer. And just my first instinct was, hey, I want to, you know, create my own sports magazine because, I thought that'd be fun. I ended up picking a few teams that I liked in each of the sports. So, back in the day, I loved like Michigan Wolverines basketball because that's when like the Fab Five was playing. We're playing.
I love it. I love
I
it.
like love like Florida State football because Charlie Ward was there. Just and just like these kinds of sports. The Knicks, of course, the Rangers, and so I would just only write about the teams I liked, and so I would cut out pictures from the New York Times and like write my own story having watched the games on TV, and then I would make a magazine, photocopy it, and then bring copies to school, and then sell it to kids for like 25 cents an issue, and then later like evolving, I released another magazine that was a little bit more ambitious. I was like a big computer nerd, knew a lot of my peers, and so I ended up creating a magazine called PC for Kids. And so just talking about, hey, like this thing called Windows 95 is coming out. Like this is what you should expect, and all the things that I kind of regurgitated from my from my readings of other sources. And yeah, this is fourth, fifth, sixth grade. I was just really into it, and just this is, I guess, how I first monetized mental capital.
So I think my favorite part about that story is where you were like, yeah, I made this magazine and like, I took the pictures from the New York Times and I was, writing my own article around it. Now, were you handwriting the article around it, or were you like actually
No.
typing it up on your dad's computer?
Yeah, so I taught myself how to use, like different desktop publishing software. And so I lay it out. I mean, like, and some of the stuff like my dad taught me basically like, hey, you can print like columns of text and then, just and the pictures and then put it on a piece of paper, tape it
Yeah,
up, and then photocopy it, and then you get like this layout. So like
yeah,
cool, like type of typesetting type of work. And so got exposed to that. And then later, like I learned this is a predecessor to Adobe Illustrator, but like there's a whole suite of software called Corel Graphics, and Corel
yep,
Draw was the one
yep.
where I
I
go
remember
in,
Corel Draw.
yeah, and I would lay out all the magazines and like, kind of, and just you have to learn like things like, okay, like page one and page 16 is, one page. So you got to do everything by four, kind of like figure out the layouts
I
and
love it.
print it out. And then I would, kind of bind it with staplers. So like just learned a ton about laying stuff out.
So that moment when you brought that to school, I love that you just like pivoted right into, yeah, and then I sold it for 25 cents to other kids. Like they were they like, I mean, did you do well? Did you have like plenty of people buying the copies of your art of it,
Yeah,
or was it a little harder to sell?
I say initially, so the sports stuff. So like, and this was always like unfortunate because like I think like I would say I had haters. So like people were like, oh, like why does this guy think he's because they look really legit. By the way, I was like, even I looked at the closet like a few months ago now because we my mom had kept some copies of it from when I was little. I was like, this is like pretty like for like a fourth grader, it was pretty impressive, I thought. And I think some of the kids like didn't appreciate that I made this thing. And then also were like, oh, you took those images from, I don't know how they knew, but they were like, you took those images from New York Times. And so that's a copyright thing. So then they told the teacher, and the teacher was like, oh, this is cool, but yeah, maybe you shouldn't be selling it. So like I wasn't allowed to sell it at my school, but I had a friend at another elementary school and I gave him a bunch of copies and I was like, hey, can you see if you can sell over there? And no one had qualms over there. No haters, no one told on him. So he sold all the copies at a different school. So like that's it's found
All the
distribution.
copies at a different school. You man, not only did you have, but you had like a distribution ring going on,
Like with the PC one, I had less trouble because I learned from that and I was like, okay, all graphics I'm gonna make myself, and it's gonna be like
Mm, mm.
stuff that I can kind of argue that is
Yeah,
original.
this is mine. This is original.
Exactly.
That's crazy. I mean, I expect very interesting that someone like called you out on the copyright stuff
Oh,
in fourth grade.
I know
Um,
that was really annoying.
well, I mean, if you think about it, it's a template for our lives and the adversity we run into as entrepreneurs. There's always going to be haters, and there's
Always.
always going to be things that pop up that are like, well, crap, that's copyright. And so you thought outside the box, found a friend who was going to a different school, and said, hey, go sell all these over there. Did you give him a cut? Did he get like a nickel for every
Yeah, we do a little rev share. That
little
guy.
rev share? I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. You found an affiliate who would go sell that. The thing that I think is interesting is, had you continued with that and just like run out and like, you know what, I'm gonna just be a magazine guy, like you probably could have gotten to, like one of the first blogs. Were you one of the first people to like actually have a blog and stuff too?
Yeah, I was an early blogger, so like so this evolved. So like as soon as I got to like middle school and high school, like I brought all of this online, and that's actually what how I got
Mm.
into the career I got into because I ended up, I wanted to keep making magazines, and I'm like, whoa, there's a way that more people could read it, it could reach more people, and I don't have to, make physical paper copies, which was a bit of a pain. Like I just wanted to publish articles, and so yeah, from I'd say like from seventh grade on, I was just continuing making websites, and all throughout high school, I had a teen magazine where we published different articles every month and with different themes, and yeah, that was a big part of my high school period as well.
I love it. I mean, you figured out that the aggregation of knowledge can be sold, right? Like I think that's a very interesting and not one that we've actually spent a fair amount of time on our podcast thus far. We've talked about SaaS products. We had Chad Rubin who sold Scubana and then is now doing Prophecy, and he still owns his own e-commerce business. and runs that. But it's been fascinating to watch him and his journey. Like he ran into a problem, he figured out how to systematize it, he turned it into a SaaS product, and then ended up selling it. This is very different in that you're consuming information from a lot of other places. You watched the game. That's one way that you consumed
Yeah.
information. I'm sure you read a lot of other articles. Then you aggregated it in your own take and then sold that.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely a big part of it. Later, we get a little bit more like because there was a romantic aspect of like being an editor or like a publisher or whatever. So like
Yeah. Yeah.
we like a good friend and I would like assign different topics and articles to writers, and we'd edit it and we'd get art for it and then publish it. So like that whole process was a lot of fun as well. So, it's a combination of we did the aggregation bit, but we also did the original content creation bit as well.
I love it. The more that I think about that, the more I'm realizing how many people out there. So one individual, and I'm gonna have him on a future episode. He's the founder of Seller Labs. He got his start by aggregating textbook buyback prices. So you would
Mm,
type in your ISBN number and it would spit back, here's the 15 different places you can sell your textbook back at and at the best price. And then he worked out affiliate deals with all this multi-million dollar business. Like that was all it did, called Book Scouter. I don't know. You may have even, I was a user of Book Scouter. I didn't even know that he
oh,
was the
really?
one behind it long before I met him. But super interesting because that's all he was doing was just aggregating information that
Yeah.
was available elsewhere. It was kind of hard to get at. You think like Kayak, Google Flights. You think about, I mean, there's a lot of Expedia. There's a lot of businesses out there that all they're doing is aggregating information. And in their case, I mean, I think it's really about like making it easier to shop. But in your case, it was like aggregating pieces of information into one succinct place. I'm almost like newsroom, like it's information arbitrage to some degree or another.
Yeah, to some degree. I think honestly, like it wasn't as sophisticated as that because like at the end, I think it was more like, yeah, the POV. It's more like, okay, like it's when I started, it was a kid writing about sports and for other kids. Cool. And then later it was like a teen writing about different teen topics for teens. And so I think it was a lot of that. But for sure, like, there's a lot of consuming other content and making it appropriate through that lens.
And so how work this in for me. Obviously, you're a successful marketing agency owner of 18 years. How did you, did these, publishing ventures play into your journey at all? What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that, from my experience, especially as moved to online like web publishing, because it was all new at that point. Like we were, like this, a lot of this stuff started on AOL and then like Netscape had just come out. So, this is like in the 90s that what all the late 90s that this all happened. And so I got, I was kind of exposed early on to like, hey, like this is what you can do a lot with websites, and that's going to be a thing. And so, that's where I got exposed to the marriage of content, design, and technology. And, kind of you bring those together, you get, that's a lot of the web was driven by that. And so, I always knew like, I could always kind of get opportunities by, helping people, with putting their content online, making it engaging, making it, usable, making it, have some kind of technical infrastructure. So those things all kind of a lot of the things that I learned in my teens, like kind of culminated into like just being like, oh, I know how to do this. And so I distinctly remember like, early on in college, just because, this is like freshman year, summer of after freshman year, where like, didn't quite have a real internship, just kind of like a work study job at that point. But like, I was like, yeah, I need to make some more money. And so started, kind of telling people like I could make websites for them and then ended up,
What year was this?
this was 2001, summer of 2000, yeah, 2002. So 2002, summer of 2002.
Summer of 2002. So, and at this point, you were in college or just
Yeah, I
graduating
was in college.
college?
I just finished my freshman year of
Just
college.
finished
Yeah.
your freshman year. So I graduated from high school in 2004 and went to my freshman year in 2005. So not very far after you. And one of the first times I monetized my mental capital was when my grandpa was having us shovel walks. He owned a bunch of apartment buildings, and this was back in like 2002, very similar time frame. And I told him, "Hey, Grandpa, how about instead of me shoveling walks, you pay me to teach myself how to build you a website?" He's like, "Have you
Uh,
built websites before?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I've done a couple in my classes, just like Google sites, sorts of things, different stuff like that. But I bet you I could
yeah.
figure out how to get you one. And all you'd have to pay is what you would normally pay me. So while my cousins are out shoveling the walks, I'll be inside making a website." And I like Googled around and figured out how to buy a domain name and figured out hosting and I set up this really old CMS that was just built for like real estate, whatever. And I totally got him a website. Like it did not look great, but he had a website by the end of that, and I didn't have to shovel any walks.
Nice. Yeah. No, there's a yeah. I mean, it sounds a lot like early on. It started with like very small type of clients, like what do you call it? Like some artists or some like a photographer, like just
Yeah,
helping these like so
portfolio. That was true for me too. When I was because I in college I did a couple of little websites here and there.
yeah.
It's funny because I did not get into like 18 years of agency work building out, ginormous websites. I pivoted and did not go down that route. But I
Yeah.
remember artists, anybody who had a portfolio, they were a lot easier to sell a website to because they needed a place to put it out there. So you got into that, and then was it kind of like a, skip and a jump and you were into doing agency work right after college, or what did that look like?
Yeah. So my co-founder and I met at college. So, this is like 2003 we met. And, I was like, cool, like we're very complementary because I was more like design content focused. And then he was more of like the coder. And so we
Okay.
could team up and do projects really fast together. So we just ended up doing a lot of freelance work. And then, you know, it just, yeah. And then we just had a lot of complementary traits like personality wise and, just kind of the things that we our strengths. And so, one thing we told each other was like, hey, it'd be cool to like find a way to work together, beyond college and like, start a business or something at some point. And
Yeah.
so, and like I'm a couple years older than him, so like I
Yeah.
graduated first, and I ended up going into finance for a little bit. Worked on Wall Street, and that was a cool experience. But I always knew like okay, like as soon as I can, I want to do something else. And even during my time on Wall Street, like I would at night come home and like we do freelance projects together, my co-founder and I. So like he like we meet up on weekends, do website builds for, like student clubs or, other small businesses. And like we'd still we had built up a portfolio. So like I distinctly remember like, I got my bonus at the end of my first year in finance. And then, the next Monday I walked in and handed in my notice because I was like, all right, cool. Like I'm gonna go start this web thing. So yeah, I was really eager. And then like there was still another year where he was, my co-founder was still in school. So then there was like a year of me alone in an apartment, just kind of teaching myself even more about, design, user experience, like all the things that kind of would be necessary. So a lot of self-learning there. And yeah, like I think little by little we just able to, accumulate clients. I mean, it was a slog. Like I even wrote about this on LinkedIn, but like it took us 5 years to break $1 million in cumulative revenue. So like it was like the first 5 years were not easy. Like it was like
Sorry.
it
I
was
hear you, man. I hear you.
but like it was I'm glad we stuck with it. So I was 23 and my co-founder was 21 at the time we founded the company, and then we just kind of stuck with it. And I think the patience paid off because over time you build relationships, and you end up kind of coming across certain super connectors or people that open doors to other places. And
Hmm.
the work, and as we got more confident in the work, we could charge more, and we can do more complex projects. And so it just kept compounding and allowed us to, just build up a roster of clients, build a team, and yeah, it's just been that kind of just steadily for a long time.
Yeah. So what year was it? So you were 20, did you say 22?
I was 23, yeah.
23. 23. And what year was that? Remember?
2006, 2006.
2006.
Yeah.
So oh right, 2006, because that's when you got it. You just said that 18 years. Okay, so 2006, man, that is so interesting. And I remember the world in 2006 pretty well because I was serving a 2-year mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I got back from my mission in 2007. And I remember that summer was when I got a Facebook account and everybody was talking about Facebook and and I was like, what the fetch is this Facebook? What? I was so confused. And they were like, you got to use your school email address. And I remember being like, okay, this is weird and interesting because it seems to be what all of my teenage cousins are doing as we're chatting about stuff. And in the background, I totally can see, you guys are out there pioneering and pushing on like new content, new content, new content. So here's my next question. What's the most you've ever been paid for a piece of content? And I mean like a full-blown website, I would consider that a piece of content.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because like single website, just like project landed project. I don't know, let's say like maybe like half a mil is probably, tops. But like, but then like if I think about engagements where like we've been working on one website for continuously for several years, evolving it and continue to update it. Like, yeah, we've had clients that are, multiple millions of dollars over that period of time. So I say, yeah, it ranges, but like, sweet spot always, I mean, not always, but like, especially in more recent years has been like anywhere between 50 to, kind of that 250 range, just depending on complexity. But yeah,
Decided the title of this episode is going to be from 25 cents to multiple millions for a piece of content. That's what we're talking about is monetizing that mental capital.
yeah,
And I mean, you've really gone to a place where you've understood how to help people aggregate their information and communicate it in such a way that
yeah.
I mean, that's really where it started for you, right? Like 25 cents in fourth grade to multiple $1 million, after. And how many years did it take before you had landed an opportunity like that? Was it like year 15 or something like that? How long did it take before you were pulling in multiple millions on a piece of content over a couple of years?
Yeah, I think by like year 7 or 8, I think we were, there were some, juicy projects that kind of, were in that range of like
I
hundreds of
love it.
thousands. So yeah, like it was really cool. And like, yeah, just we work with some fantastic brands over the years and it's been a cool journey.
Well, so 8 or 9 years old in fourth grade
Yeah.
to 30 years old, because that's where you would have been if you were 23, 6 or 7 years into being a business owner.
Yeah.
So it only took from when you were 9. So that's 21 years of compounded knowledge in connecting those dots. I mean, if you think about it, like the bigger, better game, we're trading paper clips, and then you've probably heard of this before,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
the guy
Yep.
starts with a paper clip and he eventually trades it for a house,
Yeah, I saw that.
right?
Yeah.
It only took you 21 years, but you figured out how to trade that knowledge, trade that knowledge, trade that knowledge to the point where multiple millions are made on a piece of content.
Yeah, and it's funny because like it's not like the market has stayed static either though. You know what I mean?
No,
And
no, it has
so
not.
there's that element of like, look, people value things differently. I mean, there was a period where like, you can sell websites for way more than you can do now, for example. And so we've had to evolve quite a bit, expand our services offering and just kind of, change the model in different ways or shift the focus in different ways. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's
true.
navigating all of that has been also very interesting and part of the learning process.
All right. So going back to the fourth grader, and we're going to assume that the fourth grader is mature enough to accept this advice.
Yeah.
If you could, you open up a cell phone and, little Peter, who's literally pounding away at that word processor, laying stuff out for the photocopier, but he's mature enough that he's going to accept whatever piece of advice you give him to shift this 21-year journey or, much more even to now. What would you tell him to do differently in his journey that might help him monetize his mental capital more effectively?
Yeah. No, I always have challenges with these kinds of like advice to younger self things. But yeah, because like that key of like being mature enough to accept. Because I'm like, hell no. It's
Well,
like the
so let's
furthest thing.
imagine there's another there's it's a completely different kid, and he
Yeah.
just happens to have a very similar he's got that knack. Because I
Yeah.
agree, when I'm talking to my younger self, I'm like, dude, you have no idea how immature that guy was. But
Yeah.
imagining that, super mature fourth grader
Yeah. Yeah.
willing
No.
to accept some advice, what would it be?
Yeah. I think a piece of it would be kind of I mean, I don't know how like well I can articulate it to a fourth grade version of myself, but kind of that concept of like, look, like a lot of things that come my way is like or your way is gonna have a couple different sides to it. There's going to be something that you can do that leads to kind of short-term gain, but then
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times you got to kind of see what the bigger picture is and have a bigger vision for where you want to go and work towards that and kind of you know resist kind of taking the easy path or whatever is most convenient in the moment because there's an element of like playing the long game and of like thinking about delayed gratification to some degree that's going to pay off in a big way and a lot of that kind of comes in the form of like I think it probably goes back to honestly like all drills down to like relationships because I think there was an element probably just when you're young and kind of don't know any better like a lot of things you just treat transactionally because it's like oh cool this win this project that I'm gonna do or like this little opportunity to do this and then you just kind of think about doing it cashing in a little bit and then just moving on to the next thing. But I think where I think like especially earlier in my career, if I can, you know, if I had been more strategic about, hey, like it's all about relationships. There are a lot of people that, if you treat them well and you kind of, don't, kind of think about the transaction aspect of it, but think more about investing in that longer term relationship, a lot more greater things will happen, more doors will open.
I love it. So, because I've seen that in my career as well. Sometimes I'm so focused on, like, a good example in agency is you'll take on projects that'll pay the bills, but that aren't in your sweet spot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been guilty
Yeah.
of that. I've been so guilty of that, where he's standing right there. He's willing to pay me 10 grand.
Yeah.
This really isn't my sweet spot, but I can figure it out. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take on that project because I'm trying to pay the bills. I gotta pay a mortgage, I gotta pay employees. And man, if I could go back, there's what, like, talk about like a short-sighted, like, remember the thing you want to be best at is, and for me it was automation. For you guys, I mean content, right? So choose projects that are going to build you the same way that they'll, get you where you
Yeah.
need to be.
So can I add one more thing to that? Because it's
Yes, you
like
may.
there's levels to it too, and I think that's something that I mean it's really like hard to kind of share without the knowledge because it's like so let's take your example of like all right like you're the narrowing the focus and then like kind of being able to say no to certain things, right? So like I've been in a situation where we did go that direction of like, okay, at some point we did like we served a broader category of clients, let's say, and we decided to shift focus and get narrower. But now here it's like we also didn't treat that transition well
Mm,
in some instances where like you kind of let go of these clients and how you frame that, how you kind of maintain
mm,
a relationship, even though you're gonna not do the work for them, can also impact your future
mm,
because like I'm like wow like for example there was like a startup that we work with that like the type of work we were doing was no longer fit with kind of the work that we were trying to kind of position ourselves and go deeper into
mhm.
and I just let a couple of our employees do the breakup call basically and
Ooh,
like came
yeah.
out wrong really incensed the client like really destroyed that relationship and like you know And think about it later on. I'm like, wow, these are definitely clients that now that I have other agencies that do cater to that category, like I could have easily, kind of, shifted that relationship for
Right.
these others.
There's things you
But
have
now,
now, other agencies, there's other man, that is so true. Like, don't pee in the swimming pool, right? Like be very careful about what bridges you burn
yeah,
or
just
you
don't burn
allow to
bridges. But
burn.
like, yeah, yeah, it's like don't burn bridges. Like, do my best because if I were to do that again, I would have taken because I think at the time I was like on a trip or something, so I would have been like, look, I'll have the convo, and I would have been like, okay, look, I would have already lined up other partners that would have been
Yep.
able to serve them
Yep.
really well, and then also taken the
I'm going to take
initiative
care
to
of
be like,
you, even though I'm not going to be the one who's taking care of you.
yeah, and I'm gonna make sure they do a good job. If they don't, you let me know, and I'll
Holy
make it right.
crap.
All that stuff. So like, I wish I had done that kind of stuff, but it was like just that kind of yeah, that kind of long-term thinking just wasn't available at the time. And like, yeah, I think it's those are kind of the lessons that you learn only through experience.
Well, and hopefully somebody who's listening to this can take away like especially that breakup moment. Like one, don't take on those projects that aren't the right ones. And when you do and you have to do the breakup call,
Yeah.
be the one who's going to break up and be there to go at it because you're 100% right. Like I've done that before where I put an employee in a situation where I was like I should have been the one to do that. Like that was and it wasn't even that I was like cowardice or anything like that. It was like you said, I was busy. I was on a trip. I was there was something else going on
Yeah.
that was more important at the time. And in the end, that burned bridge was probably worth a lot more than I anticipated it being.
Yeah. No, it's hard to put a price on relationships because like they can be quite, yeah, quite game
Yeah.
changing.
Don't burn bridges and be a long-term thinker. I love that. Okay. Final questions of the episode. First question. You stepped into an elevator and the guy next to you turns and says, I'm actually an 8-figure Amazon seller. What do you do? And you got 60 seconds to just tell him about any one of you've got obviously multiple agencies that are working on stuff. So you're welcome to tell them about any one of them. You got 60 seconds. Right after that, I'm going to ask you for any tips, tricks, hacks, or books you've come across in the past year that have helped you upscale your ability to monetize your mental capital. Okay. So put that one in your subconscious. It'll come
Sure.
back out here in a second. And right now, we're just going to, step into that elevator and the guy next to you turns and says, I'm an 8-figure Amazon seller. What do you do?
Honestly, like, so just 60 seconds to do it. Yeah, I probably, beyond, just kind of asking the preliminary questions to understand more, but I think I would want to put forward, just like, hey, I run a couple of different e-commerce agencies. One of them, focuses on Amazon, provides end-to-end solutions. The agency is called Prima Mode, and yeah, definitely, help brands, with their Amazon. And then the other agency is called Barrel, and focusing more on direct to consumer via Shopify. A lot of work with a lot of brands that sell also on Amazon and Shopify together, and we've have some smart ways to kind of benefit both channels by working in this omni-channel fashion. So yeah, those are the two I put forward.
I love it. You even had like a couple more seconds here. All right. Tips, tricks, hacks, or books you've come across in the last year, Peter, that have helped you monetize your mental capital, help you up your entrepreneurial game.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ones. I've absolutely loved the series, from Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. So there's like it's like three books. The first one is Who Not How. There's The Gap and the Gain, and then 10x is easier than 2x. So those are like it's like a trilogy of basically, these books for entrepreneurs. Great concepts like, Who Not How was awesome because like we get kind of told, from different sources as entrepreneurs, oh, you got to delegate your stuff and you got to kind of make sure you're focusing on the highest value kind of activities. And so I think we're like familiar with that concept, but then this book is like really frames it in like, look, if you're not really thinking intentionally about that, you're doing yourself a disservice. And it really goes into how, we are all a who for somebody trying to do something else. And it is, really our jobs, if we want to be impactful, to identify areas where others, whose unique abilities are, in that area to come in and be the who there. And then for us to really focus on what our unique abilities are. So, I really
I
love
love it.
that concept, the frameworks. And then, yeah, I think it's been super helpful.
I love it. Really, really solid stuff. I have not read The Gap and the Gain, Who Not How. I've started it and I'm really excited about it. And I have talked to so many people about 10x better than
Yeah.
2x.
Yeah.
So many people have latched onto that one and really great topics, honestly, digging into that.
One more I'll throw in just real quick is if especially for folks that want to, get into like the knowledge work services game, implementing value pricing by Ronald Baker. Like, so it's that book, it's pretty heavy on theory in the beginning, but then like the second half is really got some really great actionable examples. But really, it's about thinking, decoupling hours from kind of the work that you do, and like so, ditching timesheets, but really thinking about the work that we do as intellectual capital, and like, how do you think about like pricing the work that we do. And so it's been really impactful in helping us rethink how we price our services across all our agencies. And yeah, like value pricing gets a bad rep because I think people think, oh, like how can you price something based on like, I don't know, you help someone increase revenue and you try to take a share of that. Not many clients are gonna be on board for stuff like that. But
Yeah,
if you actually get into it, that's actually not what it's about. I mean, there's an element of it that you can make that argument, but there's other aspects of value that's much broader. And so once you understand what value can be for a client, it unlocks a lot more creativity in terms of pricing.
man, I am excited for that one. I have not come across a book speaking to value-based pricing, and I hear you on the bad rep side of things. Like, I really feel like value-based pricing is the only way to really dig in pricing. We could do an entire episode on value-based pricing, just talking about how crazy, how important it is to break away from hours when you're trying to scale an agency. Beautiful. We'll wrap it up there, Peter, and appreciate your time here on monetizing your mental capital.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.